You're listening to From Illumination to Innovation, a revealing and provocative exploration of the rapidly shifting landscape of values, purpose, leadership, and culture, both corporate and social. I'm your host, Stephanie Crane.
And I'm your host, 𝐲𝐮𝐫 Brown. We're excited to have you join us as we shine a light on new perspectives, amplify voices of influence, and elevate bright ideas that will expand your idea of what's possible in business and beyond.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of From Illumination to Innovation. My name is Stephanie Crane, and I'm one of your co-hosts and the owner of Tapas Innovation, also the corporate mystic.
And I'm your co-host, 𝐲𝐮𝐫 Brown, the founder of Elevated TA. And today we're discussing, our topic for today is HR friend or foe. And we are here with the fabulous Lisa Novak. I met Lisa at HR Disrupt last year, and she was the first person that ever just came up to me, gave me her business card, and told me to reach out to her. And I'm a little timid, and I thought, oh, there's no way that she would want me to reach out. And I emailed her, and sure enough, she remembered me, remembered why she wanted to connect with me, and has been so gracious with her time, her wisdom. And I also pinned her to be my mentor, one of my mentors. So Lisa Novak, I'm just so happy that you're here with us today.
I am so happy to be here with you both today, too. We've had such joy getting to know each other over the short time that we have. I think it's funny that you call yourself shy and timid, because what drew me to you was this ball of energy that I knew I needed to be associated with in the first place. So it is my pleasure to get to be a friend.
I had to bite my tongue too. I'm sorry, but I don't know her.
It's just like
her alter ego is apparently this shy person we don't know yet.
Timid. She's like, oh my gosh, does she really want me to reach out to her? But I'm so glad I did. So glad I did. And so today is actually, Stephanie and I were planning this episode, and I told her I know the perfect person that will bring this episode home. So this episode, HR Friend or Foe, is inspired by Stephanie's video. Tell everyone about your video.
So, my video. I don't care how kind your HR rep is. HR is not your friend. They work for the company, not for you. This often creates some confusion because HR is typically who welcomes you into the organization, and they're often the last people you speak with before you leave. This creates conflict and an almost no-win situation for people in HR and for the employees themselves. What's worse, organizational leaders often look to HR to cultivate and sustain culture within the organization, making the lines even more blurred. As an employee... First of all, I just want to start off by proclaiming my professed love for HR people and and all the hard work that they do. My video was really interesting, and it came out fairly early into my process of really entering kind of the social media influencer space. And I was working with a team, and of course, they were helping me develop strategies, and they were helping me to develop the content that would, kind of promote the message that I wanted to promote, which is really talking about toxic cultures in workplaces, how we can heal them, and things of that, and leadership, things of that nature. And they came to me with this particular video, and the hook on the video was HR is not your friend. And I'm not gonna lie, my response was, I pushed back. I said, I don't want to put that out. And this was very early in the process, and they had really asked me to trust them, to work with them, that they were going to be testing a lot of things at this point, and not everything was going to be kind of what the ongoing strategy. And I looked at the inspo video that they gave, which I want to identify it, but it was terrible. And the messaging was really terrible. HR is not your friend is a clickbait hook. I'm not going to lie about that. I'm not going to pretend that it's not what it is. And I went ahead and I allowed them to use it and tried to adapt my message more in aligned with what I felt like was important, which is about the system of corporate business and what it does to the HR department. It didn't change the fact that the hook is still the hook. So it certainly emotionally activated a lot of people. And, there were a lot of HR people that disagreed with me, but I picked up 3 HR clients off of that video. There were a lot of HR people who agreed with me a lot, actually. And there were a lot of people who agreed too. And, my team asked me if they could put it back out again, and I wouldn't let them. But I also didn't take it down. I felt like it needed to stand on its own. It's got over thousands of comments on it. And they come from a lot of different points of view. And I think it's an important conversation that needs to be had. Any future videos I do will be less clickbaity, when it comes to that. But it was a learning experience, and I don't regret the experience. I definitely opened up a conversation.
I think that's it right there. It was the start of a conversation, and this is a conversation that should be had. And when a kickoff point of a conversation has both positive and negative reaction, that drives a conversation. And this is a valid conversation to have. So beyond the clickbait, what you did was instigate a conversation. And that brought us here today, right?
It did. And I'm so happy to have you here to really get your insight and perspective, because I feel I have ambivalence about it. I feel a lot of different ways about it. I don't just kind of firmly fall into this space of defense. I'm really open-minded, and I really want to expand the perspective for everybody.
And I don't think the answer is one or the other. I don't think it's is HR your friend, yes or no question by any means. Here's the thing. Wouldn't it be so cool if corporations, if organizations, if companies could afford to pay for your friends? That'd be neat, huh? And I really I think that would change the way people operate. I think that would change how organizations activate and what they do and what they provide and how people ultimately produce for their companies, because you're fulfilling their happiness cup. But it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
Companies don't have the budget for it, and if they did, they'd put it in marketing instead.
My first question back to my team was, "I'm sorry, but who in business is your friend?" That was one of my,
and that's what it boils down to. We don't expect. I think because we impact the role of human resources, can have a direct touch or impact to all of the humans that are in the organization. There's this expectation that impact not only must always be positive, but also must always be the human resources team or person's responsibility. And that kind of human pressure doesn't fall on any other department.
Right. When we talk about company core values, it isn't just HR's responsibility, one, to create them. That should come up from leadership, but to then only uphold themselves. It should be the company's, everyone within the company should uphold the core values, So I do find it very interesting, like you were both saying, there isn't any other department in an organization where you would say, well, engineering is definitely my friend, or no, they're not my friend. And, everyone has a role in a company that serves the business. So to say that HR is serving the business, I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely correct. So does engineering, so does marketing, so does sales. Everyone
Product,
in the business,
customer success, that is exactly
the business.
Right. You got it.
My experience with both positive and not so positive HR situations is that it always comes back to the culture of the organization I'm in, 100% of the time. Toxic leaders will hire people to uphold them, and what they're doing. And if you're in a toxic environment, and I don't think that the whole business world is toxic either. I think that there's a lot of great companies out there doing great things. But I think that the toxic business that happens out there is so damaging and has such an impact both on business and individuals that it just shouldn't be tolerated, period, right? We're beyond that point of tolerating it. And so I do think when you're in an environment where that leadership is really toxic, and a lot of people have experienced that, where HR is sort of what I call mispositioned. they're just mispositioned by the organization. And it's, it's really not the HR as an individual person or even as a department. It's more what that organization is utilizing their resources. It's no different than an organization telling marketing, hey, we need you to market our way out of this problem that we just created.
Go get 1 million qualified leads. You don't get a budget to do it.
Exactly. It's like they're asking,
go make all of our people happy. We can't give you any of the tools to do it. And also we're not creating an environment that really cultivates a happy place and supports happiness of our employees. And by the way, we're having the worst layoffs over the course of the last 11 months that we've seen in years and years. And who are the people hit?
And our CEOs
very often that HR
just got
department.
Huge bonuses. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's not always the case. Let's talk about even the good guys, right? Even the good
right.
folks who mean well, who are well-intended, but the market has shifted and all that frenzy hiring they did the previous 2 years has come to a head, which I believe a lot of the HR people warned about. And then we've gone through these layoffs and this rough time, and we have to cut budgets, and so the HR team and other team members get laid off, and there's almost it's interesting because we get an effect to the HR team. Here we go again, these bad guys doing the layoffs. Well, guess what? We're the teams who get hit the hardest typically.
We're laying ourselves off.
Exactly.
Last, you have to lay everybody else off.
And there's this somehow, because we're the communicators for a company, there's the perception that we're also the decision makers. And that goes right back to exactly what you're saying. We're here supporting in the best way we can the decisions of a company, as well as the culture of a company and whatever that means. And so there's almost an expectation then if we can't support a company in the way that we would want to, well, the HR people should be these altruistic, perfect ability to drive that kind of change. And if not, they should go to a place that has that. Well, you too. We need jobs too. So it's a company job, just like that engineering job you were talking about earlier.
Lisa, I'm curious if you could expound upon what are HR's core responsibilities, because I think that there's a lot of employees out there that don't really know what their HR team does.
They know facets of it, but not the big picture.
What's the gist and what's the critical stuff, the wheels on the bus things. It's interesting. I'm going to depart from your question and then go back to it. Several years ago, people started changing the names of human resources departments because it has this negative connotation, which, as we've already discussed, is kind of ironic. But we wanted to disassociate with the concept of HR because those were the people who fire people. Those were the negative things. So we've come up with the people team and employee experience. And by the way, I jumped right into that. Yeah, I like that idea too. This is what we want to provide. But I was talking to a CRO several years ago about this exact subject, and he said, "Oh gosh, I just hate the term human resources. It feels so mechanical, like human." And I stopped him and said, "That's because you're thinking of us, that you think of the phrase of human resources as humans as resources. We are mechanizing, we are roboting the people, that they're just resources within the company. I think of human resources as the resources for the people." And that's what HR does. So going back to your question, what's the foundation of what HR does? We provide resources for our people, given the constraints that we are given by our organization. Given the restraints that we are given by our organization. So we only have that ability, the ability to do or spend or activate in the way that our organization allows or budgets, et cetera, for us. The core things that have to happen, I think y'all know some of the main ones, right? You can probably guess what's the one. What do you want your HR team to do for you every other week?
Pay you.
That's right.
I want to get paid.
I'm going to just call out that I was lost on that one. Well, I got to live.
What do I want?
I'm sorry.
I've been a consultant
I don't work
just
in
long
HR.
enough that you're not used to payroll anymore. Every employee wants that paycheck, and human resources is responsible. Sometimes the payroll processing falls into an accounting or finance function, but human resources is responsible for making sure that information is input into the system, that We know what we're paying our team members when we're supposed to pay them. So the payroll responsibility is certainly foundational. Managing the benefits that go along with that compensation, right? It's the total package. It's your health care coverage. It's those other ancillary benefits that the human resources team develops within our constrained budget to provide the best thing possible given the demographics and the needs of the actual team members. So I would say those are some of the keys. That is table stakes for human resources. The additional components are really the evolution and the development of both the company and the people that are building that company and supporting that company. So that's everything from employee relations, learning and development, those talent acquisition and talent management, providing growth opportunities within the organization where we can, providing mental health opportunities, providing a positive, not just the culture, because every single human being within an organization in every single role and capacity drives and develops the culture, whether we want that to be a part of our role or not. You are the culture of your organization. It is the collective of every single human in the organization that creates the culture, but trying to cultivate it in a positive way, primarily through communication, positive communication around the company. And I say positive, but I'm going to step back from what I just said and say true, real, honest communication around the company is what we want to strive for.
Yeah.
That's right.
That makes sense. One thing you said at the beginning when you were talking about the kind of that perspective of human resources, and somebody mentioned it to me in a context of they asked the question to me, and so I'll just pose the question to you because I didn't really have the answer, but the idea of like why, to the degree that humans are a business resource, functionally. I mean, there's a bottom line dollar associated to that. It's a managed resource.
Literally a contract agreement. We will pay you this amount if you will deliver this thing.
And why not put that, they reference it as human asset management. And why not put that in the CFO function and then leave everything else in human resources so that you can actually be that and not have that sort of perspective. And is that, my answer is like, I don't even know if that's possible. Like, I don't even know if that is something that is functionally possible in a business. But just from your perspective of, there are a lot of people that hold that perception. And there are a lot of companies who have given people reason to feel that way, who have made them feel like they are disposable or, replaceable or what have you. And, a lot of that goes into culture. And so your thoughts on that and just how you would respond.
Yeah, the concept of humans as resources, and isn't it just a tactical function and a contract role, if you will, that employment agreement. So at the baseline, sure, it is. What organizations want to do is figure ways to get the most and the best for the longest amount of time out of those humans as resources.
Right.
And to do that, it needs to be more than beyond, it needs to go beyond that contract.
You're absolutely
And I will say too, to piggyback off of that, is that I think this is another area where we can illuminate where HR does work with finance, because in talent acquisition, talent management, HR, the HRBP and the recruiter is partnering with finance on, because finance has the budget, and we are usually sharing with educating finance on like what is the market data for salary.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So what are the trends changing in benefits? Those have costs associated with them as well.
You're helping finance make these decisions on how to budget.
And when like the pacing of hiring, right? So I think that it does exist, but in a cross-functional capacity.
I've worked in organizations where HR directly reported into finance versus where HR sort of has their own leadership structure equal to finance. So what is your perspective on that? And, I know that a lot of times in smaller organizations, and then as they grow and expand, but when HR really does have a seat at the leadership table, how does that look different than when they don't?
That's an excellent question and kind of one of my favorite topics of discussion. one of the key roles, as we were talking about earlier, when you get past those table stakes, when you get past the wheels on the bus, a key role is to act as both an advisor and an advocate upward. And if we've got that blocked, we are no longer advocating for the team members, right? If it's a financial lead, they're advocating for the budget, for the revenue, for the investments,
line, basically,
et cetera. And that eliminates where the truth of advocation for the employees and the team members comes from them. So it's a gap they're allowing themselves to create at the executive level. It is common. Now, I'm also going to say I've worked at plenty of companies with lovely CFOs who wanted to be advocates and who were driving that voice upward.
Yes.
But that's the risk we're putting ourselves at if HR is not at the table.
Yeah. That makes sense. That does make sense.
So I guess I'm curious because it seems like with Stephanie's post that you were able to, a lot of HR employees have been connecting with that post. And I do feel like we're living in a place, thanks to the massive layoffs and restructuring in organizations, where HR is the target. My question is twofold. What would be advice that you would, or recommendations that you would give to employees to understand HR better? And then what wisdom would you pass on to HR professionals in this time?
Yeah, I like that you qualified it within this time and what's happening in this market right now. So let's talk about that for a second, because this is some crazy time, folks.
Right.
It's weird. And there is always a shift. The market comes in waves always. And I've been doing this long enough, literally decades, to be able to see a lot of those waves. And I can honestly say this is a real weird one. And there's a lot of I told you so going on. Before we look at this moment's market, let's look at what's happened the last few years. So in 2020, we had a relatively equal amount, surprisingly, of employment terminations and hiring. In that very strange year, right? It was there was an initial panic. Oh my gosh, the market has frozen, and especially I talk about, of course, the tech market, because that's my space. It's very different when we talk about the services market in 2020, of course.
Yeah.
But honing in on the tech market, we had a surprising, almost a shocking balance of losing employment and gaining employment. And then when we came back out of our bizarro hidden shells that was 2020 and started creeping back outdoors in 2021, and people started realizing, okay, the market didn't plummet as badly as we thought. Hiring is still moving. Oh my gosh, my next door neighbor's hiring too. We need to get everyone. And the frenzy began.
Oh, yes.
And we were all part of the frenzy. And those of you out there who have been in the job market for 3 or fewer years, you've only seen the frenzy. And there's some expectation or belief that that is what the market looks like. That was a weird time. And throughout 2021 and 2022, I was holding my breath, and there were a lot of us holding our breath, knowing this is not going to last and it's going to be very ugly when it doesn't. And so the frenzy happened, and we were doing this massive sweep of throw money at the problem, everything anyone wants, mental health, schmental health, let's do this. We'll throw more money at it. We're going to pay you too much. We're going to bonus you too much. We're going to hire people who we don't actually have jobs for right now, but we think you're really smart, and eventually we're going to have something for you.
Wow.
So we're going to keep you on payroll. This is a great way to ruin a company, right? And it was happening. It was happening everywhere. We all saw it and we all felt it. And it also gave every employee out there in this market this sense of it's not entitlement, this sense of worth and value that that was not real in our market. I think every one of you precious people are worth everything you've ever made in the moment you were making it, but the market actually dictates that. And so that brings us to where we are right now. Where we are right now is the massive correction of that hiring frenzy. Most of us knew it was going to happen. If you're watching the news, if you're watching economics, you could have predicted that it was going to happen. And it did. And so we saw 2023 change everything. And what that did for us right now is force more communication, right?
Yeah.
We had these insane budgets that we were able to spend on our people to attract and retain our people. Let's make no bones about it. The companies were not giving those budgets to care for the health of their people or to provide their people better cars or fancier meals. They were doing it for the health of the company, to get the best people and keep the best people in the time they thought they needed to get and keep the best people. That is not where budgets are going anymore. And so we have to understand there are going to be, and this is not our last one, this is just a wave. It was a big, ugly one, but it is a wave in the industry and in the economy where things will shift, and that's going to keep happening. So to answer your question that you asked me about an hour ago, is what does that mean now, and how does HR kind of respond to the needs of the employees, so to speak? It's through communication. It's through helping people understand that, and that's going to be education as people, like I said, those folks who have been in the workspace for a few years or fewer, it's going to help them understand these waves as they move forward in their careers too, because there's going to be more of them. This is how life works.
Very much.
Bless you all.
I know, right? We're all in it. I know, right?
Oh, it did, like, I would say it does feel really weird. Like different from the housing crash in 2007, that was an interesting market. And I actually felt like it only impacted those that, like for me at least, like I was in college and it impacted my ability to get grants. Right. And then those in the financial sector, I think jobs.
I was in financial services at that time. And I remember what I like to describe as the conference call that hung the world, where we did a company-wide conference call, and in one fell swoop, I watched, like I was in a room with like 60 people and everybody's heads just went like that. It was just such a hard time. I mean, we ended up laying off, I don't know, maybe more than 100 people during that time. It was really...
And the difference in that moment is that as that conversation happened and everyone knew what was happening in the economy, and everyone's head was able to sink a little bit, and we were able to digest that. What's happened in the last couple of years has been more like this. Like there is, where are we going? It's up, it's down, and that's harder to communicate.
It's like the people I just hired. I'm like, oh, you gotta, like, that's crazy. Like, how did we not know that we would be laying these people off? So I think it was like one of those
frenzy feeling instead of, right? We
what was going on?
Saw it last time. We saw it coming, and sure enough, it hit, and we were able to say, y'all all saw it coming. And this time we almost didn't. We blinded ourselves through the enthusiasm and the excitement. What goes up,
it does come down. So
how do we find balance?
Ooh,
if I mean,
I'm just HR. We need a whole panel up in here. How do we save the world? I was just talking about HR not being your friend.
But we can. We each in our own way can bring balance into our environments in different ways. And as we've just discussed, HR does have a big impact. Regardless of how they're being driven. Whether or not they're being driven from, a visionary leadership team that wants HR to be present in that space and setting that vision with them, or, they're in a position where maybe they're in a smaller environment and they don't have as much impact. But I believe that we all have that capacity to empower ourselves. And so what can HR people do to sort of help mitigate some of this? There's a lot of anxiety out there around HR, and it's coming even from within. It's coming from within the house. The call is coming from within the house. It's like,
well, you said two things there, because you said we all have the ability to empower ourselves. What's HR doing about it?
No, it's just not like that.
Just
from that perspective of asking, since we're talking about HR, I could certainly speak for marketing.
I think that's it, though. I think that's it. What can HR do? HR can help you empower yourselves. And how can HR help the individuals empower themselves and find that place? It's through communication and education.
Let me clarify my question. I was asking what HR can do for themselves to bring balance, because they are caught in the midst of, that was a very, aggravated post for a lot of reasons. And it wasn't just the hook. It brought up a lot of stuff. And, again, a lot of HR people reached out for their own needs. And so I'm just sort of like exploring that idea of like, how can HR support themselves? Like when you're sitting there saying we have to lay everybody off and then we lay ourselves off. I mean, that's hard. That's really difficult. And
it's hard. A lot of times HR is responsible for being the messenger. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
That we're the bad news people. And so people, we get the bad news mirror right back at us, right? Oh, you're the ones telling me this bad thing, so you must be the bad people. And what we don't do, we communicate the message. And what HR often doesn't do is communicate the why behind the message. Here's the what. The company told us we have to share the what with you. Here's the what that's going on in the company. And we're not empowered to share the why. And I think that's critical. I think that that's an area that HR really can and should be better arming ourselves and challenging our leadership to do. Don't go beyond giving me the message I need to share, whether that's we're having a layoff or we're cutting these programs, or talk about the why. Why? Because we went after this group of clients and it ended up not a good market for us. And so we lost some money there. And here's what we're doing to recover our business.
Oh my gosh, Lisa, that is so true. Like I remember in one of my roles, we had offers getting ready to go out. And, by the time an offer goes out, candidates are aware that they're getting an offer and they want to know why the offer isn't coming out. And I remember I had like 20 candidates, finalists, I had to call and tell them that the roles no longer existed. Now,
and that was your only message.
In HR, they give you a script and that is what you read. If anyone on the floor hears you read try to give them anything else, you are in trouble. So I love that you said being like empowering to tell the why and pushing back on leaders, because people want to know the why, the fundamental why. And I think when you understand the why, you can at least accept something versus having to create the why in your head.
I feel like you're illuminating very clearly too, kind of where the crux of the challenge really truly lies in that sense. And you said something, we only give the bad news, but one of the points I make in my videos, the confusion is no, that's not true. You hire people, you give the job offer, you give them the job, you give them the paycheck, you become their friend. Right. You become their friend. They see you that way because you're the face of the company and you're telling them, this is the organization and we're going to recruit you and it's going to be, and that's where that, and then later on when you're rescinding the offer or you're laying them off, and that's where I think that real confusion happens because there's no message in between. You don't get to.
And HR wants to be the friend, right? I can't tell you how many people I have talked to and interviewed and hung out with in the world of HR who and I asked this question, I think you and I have all talked about this, when I asked the question, why'd you get into HR? And they say, because I love people.
Every single one of them.
And I always say, well, that's a crying shame. That's going to be really hard for you because that's like being a vet because you love animals and you're going to have to cut them open and you're going to have to shove their eyeball back in the socket when they get hit by a car. And oh my gosh, you're going to have to put them down even.
Yeah. Right.
So you better go into veterinary school because you love science and you love, biology and there are other components. And you should probably consider HR because you're very organized, because you understand process, because you know how to communicate very well. And then you should also like people because those are the people that's what you're developing these processes, these systems, these tools, this communication.
So in some sense, it feels like HR isn't just confusing for employees. It's actually confusing for HR.
I agree.
Oh, yes.
I mean, if you're going into HR with this ideal and then it gets turned on its head, you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place at that point because you see, I mean, I've known so many just really talented, many of my family members are HR specialists. And so, it's like, they do love people. I mean, they do. Everyone I know in HR really does. And I do think it's a dichotomy they have to struggle with.
Yeah. And if you think about it, marketing people like people too, and
salespeople,
salespeople like people too, and any number of roles. I've been asked before, why didn't you go into sales, Lisa? You'd be so good at it. And I always say, because I like working harder and making less money. It just felt right to me. But there are also engineers who love people. There are also HR people who really don't like people that much, and they're good at what they do also.
That's absolutely
so that's a lovely personal trait. It is not necessarily a significant job quality.
To the point of the diversity of how much HR does. You could be in a very non-people, very regulated role, or you could be in a very people-facing, and I say that just like marketing, everything's marketing, people are creative, and it's like, or you could be a research analyst, and
I focus
it's like,
on SEO.
Not all marketing people are just out there making things pretty, and so it really is those perceptions that we've sort of built up, these stereotypes that we have around these.
And bless their hearts, the folks coming into HR with this altruistic idea of I get to go help people. It's and I'm going to go build cultures. And I think to myself, well, when companies can afford that, you'll have jobs. But the rest of HR looks like this.
Right. So as far as final takeaways and thoughts, HR, friend or foe, what would you leave our audience with when they're considering this question?
I think most HR teams have a goal of creating an environment that supports employees and allows them to be seen as the friend. We also have to give the grace to those HR departments that they are employers of an organization. And all of the employers within an organization are responsible for the function and the productivity of the organization. It's a career. It's a piece of a business, just like any other role in the business is a piece of the business. We are also very hopeful that we can provide a positive piece of our business, just like every other role wants to provide a positive piece of their business. So we're just like you, is part of it. I think that would be my messaging. My message to HR would be a little bit different. My message to HR is give yourself that grace. And
I agree with that.
Focus not only on the programs that we can or can't build, but also on how we talk about them. The communication. Again, going back to that why, I think more people, and there's plenty of data to support this. This isn't me just opinioning here. More people will stay at a company that is transparent and struggling than will stay at a company that is successful and quiet.
And I feel like that last message that you just gave, that's not actually for HR. That's leaders. That's for you. You need to be listening and talking to your HR people and allowing them more latitude. Because if HR is... I don't like to say that HR is responsible for developing the culture at all, but they are in some way responsible for sort of curating or nurturing. Nurturing it and cultivating it in that way. And you need some latitude to be honest with the people that you're working with if you're in that position. There's just no way that you can be truly successful with those types of reins, I think. I think it's really a challenge. So very
And
insightful.
you're right. The messaging is all for leaders. You're exactly right. That this is about leadership, and it is about how you run the company. How you run the company is dictates how people feel about your HR team.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lisa. If our audience out there wants to learn more about HR, where can they find you?
Well, I run Element HR. I'm a fractional HR leader and consultant, and have a team that we can provide some of those services and, most importantly, that guidance and those answers.
Where can I find you on LinkedIn?
You can find me on LinkedIn, of course, and you can also find me at lisa@elementhr.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. And HR is a business function, everyone. Stephanie, do you have anything to say?
HR is a business function. And, in business, I think that we all have to take the perspective that we're all there serving our needs. And the more that we can come together, and everybody can lead from wherever they're at in an organization, right? And it's just really about coming together and supporting each other and recognizing that we have a common purpose. Even if we don't all know what it is, sometimes we do have a common purpose for where we're at. So
I do have one more thing to say. We can slice that last thing. So if you are, please get to know your HR team members, your recruiters, and everyone else within the organization to build that relationship cross-functionally. So I'm pretty sure HR, myself, like I would love to hear like positive things that are going on in the organization versus the worst thing. Not that we're not there to help you with that, but we would like to hear the good stuff too. And then secondly, if you are struggling and you don't feel that you can connect with anyone in HR, there is the 𝐸𝐸𝐸 that you can engage with, and they are legally your friend, I guess. But
they're your advocate. They're your legal advocates.
So please do that.
And on that note, I think thank you for a great show, ladies. This was fantastic. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Share, follow us, love us.
Oh, okay. Love us. Bye. Cut.
Bye. Thank you, cut.
Thanks for listening to our show. Show us your support by following us on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
You can also find us on Castus at FromIlluminationToInnovation.castus.com. If you love our show, share it with your friends and coworkers too. Let's all work together to help businesses vibrate higher.